You know, James Harden has had a stretch for the Rockets where he has scored at least 35 points coming into tonight's game against the New Orleans Pelicans. He has scored at least 35 points in 6 games consecutively. And tonight he scored 41 points. And now the streak is at 7. And with the streak being at 7, he now has tied Michael Jordan from the 87-88 campaign for the, I believe, the fourth longest stretch of 35-point game performances in modern times. Kobe Bryant holds the modern record with 13 consecutive games of at least 35 points. That might be the overall record because I can't remember whether or not the article is saying modern as if like since 1980 or is it all time, because I would think that Wilt Chamberlain might have had a stretch like that, but it's easy for him not to. Even though he averaged 50 points one year and then 45 the next, I can see him getting 31, 27 and not have a stretch like that. It's possible. Jordan holds the second highest stretch with 10 consecutive games. I would imagine he did it in the 86-87 season when he averaged 37.1 points per game. That's the thing about that, though. I see people like posting the point totals and saying, wow, man, James Harden is in a zone. 47, then 41, then 35, then 35, then 40, blah, 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 blah. But in reality, what he's doing when it comes to scoring is he's ball hogging. I mean, when I was growing up, we cared about efficiency. And you got props when you were efficient. When the guy scored 45 or 50 points, it meant something when he was in the zone. It was an incentive to shoot because you were a high percentage scorer. You weren't wasting possessions. That's one of the reasons when I was growing up watching basketball that a lot of your post players still were the dominant scorers. You know, I'll tell you, like, if you look at the NBA 25 years ago, Michael Jordan was an anomaly. Dominique Wilkins was kind of an anomaly. Well, I don't want to say most, but a good percentage, probably a majority of the guys averaging over 20 points per game in the NBA, late 80s into the 90s, were probably post players. Now, I don't have evidence to back that up. You know, I don't have anything in front of me to back that up. I'm just going by memory and common sense. I mean, you think about it, like, had guys like Shaquille O'Neal, David Robinson, Akeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, Terry Cummings come to mind immediately. Derek Coleman, Larry Johnson, Alonzo Mourning. You know what I mean? Like, I think of post players scoring 20 points or more. Vin Baker. You know, so it's so many guys who were teams' leading scorers or amongst leading scorers. They were scoring in the post. So, but now that's all flip flopped. Everybody who's scoring are perimeter players or swingmen. But James Harden to me is a ball hog. He's ball hogging. Now he has to ball hog because really there's nobody else in the team who can score in the manner that he does. He gets the foul line a lot. During this stretch, he's getting to the foul line about 13 times a game. Incidentally, during Michael Jordan's 7-game stretch in 87-88, he got to the foul line about 13 times a game. James Harden is an excellent foul shooter. He's even better than Michael Jordan at the foul line. During this stretch, James Harden is shooting about 88 to 89% from the foul line. Michael Jordan in his stretch shot 80% from the foul line. Both great, but Harden is the better free throw shooter. Harden is the better three-point shooter. I'm not disputing that. But that kind of goes against Harden's argument a little bit too, because Michael Jordan was able to do what he did without benefiting from the three-point line. As you know, three-pointers are 3 points as opposed to anything else being 2 points. But, for instance, during this stretch for James Harden, he has averaged 40.4 points per game, which is incredible. 40.4 points per game. But Michael Jordan, during his 7-game stretch in 87-88, averaged 42.1 points per game. And that was without the benefit of the three-point line. But the strongest evidence that I could present that James Harden is a chucker, a ball hog, is his field goal percentage. He's averaging only 41.1% shooting. This is a guy who everyone's saying is on fire and he's in the zone, but he's missing 59% of his field goal attempts. Now, incidentally, during this stretch, he's shooting over 40% from three, which is great, but overall, he's only shooting 41%. Whereas with Michael Jordan, during his 7-game stretch, he shot 56% from the floor. That's efficient. A shooting guard. Now, during this stretch, James Harden not only has averaged 40.4 points per game, but he's averaged 5.1 rebounds, 7.8 assists, which is the only statistic that he has an edge over Jordan, major statistic. He's averaged 0.6 blocks, 2.3 steals, and 4.6 turnovers per game. Michael Jordan, during that stretch, averaged 42.4 points per game, 5.9 rebounds, 4.9 assists, 2.9 steals, 2 blocks, and 3.6 turnovers per game. So you had the guy who was more efficient, took care of the ball better, despite having an extraordinarily high usage rating, was a better defensive player, averaged more steals, averaged more blocks, averaged more rebounds. The only major statistic that James Harden had over Michael Jordan is that he averaged more assists. But that was just probably in how, Michael Jordan was used, as far as in the game. So, he was not he could average, if he wanted to, 7 or 8 assists per game. He did it in 89, but Jordan's role in the offense was as a scorer. So, everything else was kind of secondary on most nights, except for his defense. But it's no comparison. Calling James Harden the best ISO player of his generation, or the best ISO player some people have seen. I'm like, come on now. I remember I saw a video that compared James Harden. They called him a Carmelo Anthony, Adrian Dantley hybrid, which I think is kind of insulting to Carmelo. If anything, when I look at James Harden, I see a combination of perhaps more of Gilbert Arenas and Adrian Dantley hybrid. You know, he does have the ability. He has a knack at getting the foul line, like Adrian Dantley, getting those calls from, you know, contact or incidental contact or whatever. He just has a knack for getting those calls. But he kind of reminds me of Gilbert Arenas as being a chucker. A guy who every now and then will have a night where he might, have an efficient night shooting the basketball, but on most nights, you know, he's more of a 9 for 26 type guy. You know, I remember Gilbert Arenas on that night when he scored 60 points against the Lakers. It was forgotten and was lost in the sauce is that Kobe had 45 points himself in that game that went to overtime. Gilbert Arenas scored 60 points. The next time they played against each other, I think Gilbert had like 30, but he only shot like, I think, 9 for 29 or 9 from 30 or something like that, you know. But yeah, he kind of reminds me a little bit, James Harden kind of reminds me a little bit of Gilbert Arenas in his shot selection. Gilbert took some stupid shots sometimes, some tough shots, and James Harden has a knack for making some shots, but he does take dumb shots sometimes. And in the postseason, when defenses tighten up and, you know, and the refs don't call everything, that's sometimes why James Harden suffers and struggles at times in the postseason. Whereas a guy like Michael Jordan, with the plethora of moves that he have and the quickness and his ability to score in so many different ways, he was always able to have so much more success in the postseason. That goes without saying. So it's a nice little stretch by James Harden, but you know, he might have matched, you know, a guy like Jordan or maybe later on a guy like Kobe or what have you, but nah, it's not close in my opinion, like as far as offensive efficiency and you know, the things they can do with the basketball. I mean, I get it. James Harden is a nice ISO guy, you know, whatever, man, but as an overall offensive weapon, he's not in the same league as a Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or shit. Even, be honest with you, I'd say a Bernard King. You know? Tell me what you guys think.